And now that we have an opportunity to close it, people should never seek to oppose this American brokered peace. None of them matter to us. We don't need them. We don't want them, especially when they're obstructionist. If France thinks they're going to take $300+ billion of Russian sovereign wealth and somehow use that to pay for Ukraine, they're smoking dope. That just will not happen at all. Donald Trump will never go for it. And eventually, if France wants to join the family of nations, and notice what I'm saying here, you see the script has been flipped. It used to be if Russia wants to join the family of nations. But I think if you take a look at what happened at the United Nations recently, you'll see that, gosh, it was the United States voting with Russia, China, Belarus, North Korea, and it was France and the United Kingdom in opposition. Let's just put those two relevant forces on a scale and see which outweighs which. France and England are on the wrong side of history. Germany is on the wrong side of history. They're irrelevant. They don't matter. We don't care. And the proof is that we're going to go forward with an agreement with Russia that they have no say in whatsoever.
Europe's fate has already been sealed. The United States holds all the cards, and those who resist will be crushed. Not with war, but with raw economic and political force. The message is clear: obey or face collapse. Scott Ritter just painted a chilling picture of American dominance, where alliances are disposable and Europe is powerless to defy Washington's will. He warns that if nations dare to challenge the U.S. peace plan with Russia, they risk total economic devastation. This isn't diplomacy. This is coercion on a global scale, and the balance of power is shifting in ways that will leave entire nations scrambling for survival. As we move beyond the flawed analysis of Scott Ritter, the brutal reality of the battlefield in Ukraine tells a different story, one written in blood, steel, and unyielding determination. The situation near Pokrovsk and Toretsk has reached a critical tipping point. The battlefield is shifting rapidly, with Ukrainian forces fighting tooth and nail against an overwhelming Russian push. The stakes have never been higher, and the very survival of key defensive positions hangs in the balance. This is not just another battle. This is a desperate fight to prevent catastrophe. And right now, in a place where war shows no mercy, Ukrainian troops are facing what may be one of the most intense and pivotal engagements of this war. The war in Ukraine has entered a decisive phase, where every bullet, every missile, every soldier matters. The battlefield is shifting with an urgency never seen before, and nowhere is this more evident than in the inferno unfolding near Pokrovsk and Toretsk. Here, in the crucible of battle, Ukrainian defenders are locked in a brutal struggle against relentless Russian offensives. With supply lines under pressure, intelligence support cut off, and Russian forces exploiting every opportunity to advance, the defenders are being pushed to their absolute limits. The negotiation clock is ticking, but neither side is willing to give an inch without maximizing their territorial gains. The Russians are throwing everything they have into breaking through the Ukrainian defensive lines, knowing that once negotiations begin, the ground they hold will be a crucial bargaining chip. The Ukrainian forces, on the other hand, are fighting with sheer desperation, aware that if they lose these positions, they may never get them back. For Ukraine, the loss of U.S. intelligence support could not have come at a worse moment. Since the start of the war, American intelligence had given Ukraine an invaluable edge, tracking Russian troop movements, pinpointing artillery positions, and allowing Ukrainian forces to strike with deadly precision. Now, that advantage is gone. With Washington halting military aid and intelligence sharing, the battlefield has become a fog of war for the Ukrainian command. For the first time, Russia can mass forces in key areas without Ukraine knowing where the next attack will come from. This is already playing out in terrifying fashion on the front lines. Ukrainian soldiers, once able to anticipate Russian movements and adjust their defenses accordingly, are now fighting blind. The result? A chaotic and increasingly desperate battle for survival. The Russians have seized upon this moment of Ukrainian vulnerability. They are waging an aggressive and multifaceted campaign designed to disorient and stretch the Ukrainian defenses thin. Massive bombing campaigns are being used not just for destruction, but to create fear and uncertainty. Deceptive maneuvers are being executed to force Ukraine into second-guessing where the next real attack will land. In Zaporizhzhia, Russian forces have intensified their attacks, hammering Ukrainian positions with wave after wave of assaults. The goal? To make Ukraine believe this is the main thrust of the offensive. But in reality, the Russians are carefully building up forces elsewhere, in places like Pokrovsk and Toretsk, where they are poised to launch a potential breakthrough offensive. Pokrovsk is under tremendous pressure, with Russian forces steadily advancing towards the outskirts. Ukrainian defenders, exhausted and outgunned, are holding the line with sheer determination, but the numbers are not in their favor. Russian forces are applying constant artillery bombardment, reducing Ukrainian positions to rubble before sending in waves of infantry and armored assaults. Drones buzz overhead, striking with terrifying precision. Reports indicate that Russian shock troops are attempting to break into the city, engaging in brutal house-to-house combat. Yet, despite these brutal conditions, Ukrainian forces continue to hold out. The battle for Pokrovsk is becoming a meat grinder, where every street, every building is contested. The Russians are determined to take it, but Ukraine refuses to let it fall. Further east, the situation in Toretsk is even more critical. Ukrainian forces in this sector are in grave danger of being encircled. Russian attacks have intensified, with armored columns pressing from multiple directions in an attempt to cut off escape routes. In Toretsk, Ukrainian soldiers have nowhere to retreat. The city is turning into a fortress of resistance, with defenders digging in, using every weapon at their disposal to repel the oncoming assault. The air is thick with the sound of machine gun fire, artillery blasts, and the distant screams of the wounded. Supplies are running low, and reinforcements are stretched thin. The Russian pincer movement is closing in. If Toretsk falls, Ukrainian forces in the area could be trapped and annihilated. This would be a devastating blow, not just for the military, but for the entire war effort. Despite the dire situation, Ukraine is not standing idly by. Counterattacks have been launched to disrupt Russian advances. In Uspanivka, Ukrainian forces have mounted a counteroffensive, pushing Russian troops back and regaining some territory. Reports indicate that Ukrainian units, including elements of the 25th Airmobile Brigade, have engaged Russian forces in brutal close-quarters combat, reclaiming sections of key villages. While these efforts are slowing the Russian advance, they come at a staggering cost. Every counterattack drains Ukraine's dwindling resources, and without sufficient reinforcements, the tide of battle remains uncertain. The situation near Pokrovsk and Toretsk is at a critical juncture. The next few weeks will determine the fate of these regions. If Ukraine can hold the line, it may buy enough time to stabilize the front before negotiations force a freeze in territorial gains. But if the Russians break through, it could set off a domino effect, leading to the collapse of Ukrainian defenses in the region. The defenders of Pokrovsk and Toretsk are fighting not just for these cities, but for the future of Ukraine itself. They are surrounded, outnumbered, and left with no choice but to fight to the bitter end. The world is watching. Will Ukraine withstand this storm, or will this be the beginning of a catastrophic retreat? The coming days will decide everything. The battle for Ukraine's future is reaching a critical turning point. With intelligence support cut off and Russian forces seizing every opportunity to press forward, the situation near Pokrovsk and Toretsk is growing more dire by the hour. But Ukraine is not backing down. The counterattacks, the strategic maneuvers, and the fight for critical territory prove that resilience is still at the heart of this war. What do you think about the latest developments? Will Ukraine's counteroffensive succeed in cutting off Russian supply lines? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. We want to hear from you. And if you found this update insightful, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next crucial update. Every share, every comment, and every bit of awareness helps Ukraine's fight for survival. Stay informed, stay engaged, and we'll see you in the next update.